Hey folks, I'm actually restarting my, I guess you would call it Oakland political kitchen conversations. I just came up with that. Anyway, this is Joe Tuman, and he's running for mayor. Good friend of mine, actually. And Joe, tell my viewers, first of all, how the campaign is going. But talk again about why you decided to run in brief, because there's another video out there that's part of a playlist where you talk about it. But oh come on, yeah. And once again, she's part of our video. Say hi. And we're at the Lake Shore Cafe on 3257 Lake Shore. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Great food.
Yes, absolutely.
So your question was, how's the campaign going?
Right.
We came in at the very end of July. So we've really been going since the end of July, technically almost like the beginning of August to this point, and it's gone very, very well.
And also in brief, why you decided to run, for those who just are seeing you for the first time.
Maybe I'll answer those in reverse.
Sure.
So the quick answer, Denny, on why I decided to run is that I think this city is the conditions of this city relative to safety have actually gotten worse. We're at a point today where people scoreboard watch for homicides. The robbery rate is something that's followed very, very carefully and closely. And for me, it's not just the numbers, it's the qualitative difference in the crime. We have more violent crime today. Gun violence is committed in broad daylight by perpetrators who really aren't making much of an effort to conceal their identity, which suggests that it's almost like a comparison to the Wild Wild West. People own the streets and not worried about the consequences. So all of these things, and especially the fact that some of this violence is now catching as collateral damage with small children. Just this last Friday, a small 2-year-old child was playing in his own yard with grown-ups and parents around him doing what they should do. They were exactly where they should be, and still not safe from this. These sorts of things, to me, I mean, if this happened anywhere else, and it was just one child in a whole year struck by that, there would be a public outrage about this. And I think there is a sense of outrage here. But to be frank, the response from City Hall and the leadership it takes to actually effectively react to this has been wanting. So I'm running basically because I love the city and I want it to be a safe city.
You've also been personally affected by crime.
I beg your pardon?
You've also been personally affected by crime.
Yeah, I have. My family suffered that too. And my son was violently assaulted by 4 men who tried to rescue a co-worker who had been mugged. And while I respect the importance of courage, bravery,
right.
We had a conversation about using more justice where this is concerned. And his response to me, though, at the time, I think which was fair, was, if I hadn't done something the next night, this was outside a restaurant where we worked, there'd be more muggings. You have to take a stand. And I guess in a way that's kind of what, for me, the campaign is about as well. You have to take a stand on this. And I think everybody who lives here in every community has felt violence. My family's not unique in that way. And everyone you talk to them, there's probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation where they'll be able to tell you a story about someone that they know who was mugged, assaulted, had something stolen from them, and they're tired of it. They're really tired of it. So, in a nutshell, that's the reason. I want to provide real leadership for the city. I feel the same kind of passion that I've always felt for the city, love, concern, and of course we want to focus as well on solve crime, bringing businesses here, more jobs, helping the unemployment rate, which I think is a key to sort of keeping crime down once you suppress it, and changing the narrative of the city. I'm really tired of people talking about crime. I wish it would never be a political issue. I want us to focus on the other things that come after that, that are the usual things that you talk about. Are we spending enough on education? We paved enough roads? Those sorts of things. It's hard to get to those conversations when you're always worried about crime.
What do you think about the situation with the sports team? We talked about it before with the Warriors. What do you think now with Coliseum City? Developers being in the E&A process,
Well, I think that we have to be careful because by the time you air this video, I mean, this is such a fluid situation, something else could have happened. So based on what
By tomorrow?
who knows?
Because that's when the video is going up.
Yeah, based on the information we have as of today, I don't know that really that much has changed. I think the Warriors of the three teams are probably still the most likely to leave simply because their owners have stated a very direct desire. I know Oakland's trying to put on a full court press. How's that for basketball lingo?
Yeah.
To keep them here. And I certainly want them to leave, but San Francisco is putting on an equal amount of pressure, and I think the only thing that's going to derail the effort there, I want them to go, I'm just stating the reality. The only thing that's likely to derail the efforts there is if people really feel that a new giant stadium outside of the environmental impact might qualitatively change the view. You know, that was a beautiful area. This became a beautiful area after the tragedy of the earthquake and the collapse of the Embarcadero Freeway, the overpass. And it opened up that great vista there. If you're in San Francisco looking at the bay, and I think that's what allowed the development of all that.
But it begs the question, if you were mayor, how would you handle this?
Well, so let me just
Sure, yeah.
If enough people are reminded of the fact there that the brand new gigantic arena will obstruct their view just like the old freeway did, I think they'll probably will be moved to block it.
Yeah, that's already happened.
But there are a lot of political forces behind that. When you combine that with the will of ownership on this side of the bay to move, it makes it kind of difficult. So if I were the mayor at this point, I certainly would be after the Warriors to want to at least look at what an arena might be here. I have to say, I'm not about spending an enormous amount of city general fund dollars on something like this, but I certainly would be sending my own political capital because I do think when a sports team agrees to leave, it's a form of rejection. When I talk to people in the community who say, I don't like it that they're leaving, it seems to me what they're saying is, I feel like we're being rejected, but they choose something else over us because there's something wrong with us.
I gotta ask you,
I don't think that's okay.
right, I gotta ask you, why is it that every time someone runs for office in Oakland, you're under the impression that when it comes to sports, they always have to pony up money as opposed to be the catalyst for maybe a private investment or something?
Well, because
I hear that again and again and again.
Sure.
It's kind of like, huh?
The answer, I think, is that in all too many instances, even when you promise you're not going to put public money into it, you end up putting public money. Look, if we build to move from the Warriors to baseball, if we were to build, and I'd like to, with private dollars, a baseball park out at the Howard Terminal in Jack London Square. It's a marvelous place for a baseball park, and it can really sort of complete the development of Jack London Square in terms of other retail, restaurants, and the rest of it. I think it'd be very nice. To suggest somehow that there wouldn't be a public contribution to this is not entirely truthful. They're probably going to require perhaps an off-ramp from the freeway, or to get a mayor involved with chasing BART to see if there'd be a new BART station. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Or perhaps a discussion of some kind of light rail service that would connect the downtown from Oakland down and around from Jack London into a stadium in order to deliver pedestrians there who could get to the ballpark. And that's going to come with public money. So to suggest somehow that that's not involved, it almost always is. And in some instances, of course, in the past, there have been lots of cities that committed way too much money and took bonds out on this and then had teams leave.
And I was thinking beyond public infrastructure. I was thinking in terms of the structure itself. There's an assumption.
I mean, even if we shift from baseball to football, the Raiders, who would love a new, smaller, more efficient, high-tech stadium, I think we're asking the other day for, what was it, $350, I'm not sure if the exact number, but I believe it was $350 million. And that was supposed to come from the city. That's just not going to happen. Same thing, though. It's public money. And the county's going to make us pony up part of that, too, more than likely if we did that. So, and if I'm mayor, we have other priorities. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to help. It just means we need to provide basic services as a city. And once we've gotten to a place where you can afford to do those things and you have lots of excess and you've set stuff aside for pensions and health care and everybody's taken care of, then you have the luxury of looking at those.
I should clarify. I don't think that the city was expected to pay $300 million. That's a gap, and the question mark was, how is it going to be filled? Okay, but I know for a fact that the city was never officially on the hook to pay that much.
Well, I don't think we're on a hook to do anything.
Or is going to be any proposal. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, all right. But
as a person who's probably too close to the project for his own good, but I got to protect.
Here's my point, though.
Yeah.
You certainly know. Well, first of all, I didn't hear them distinguish and say the city's not part of that. I just heard they say we would expect that would come from the public sector. We're part of the public sector, right? It doesn't really matter because there's no way that's going to happen as far as the city's concerned. Even with the current regime, that's not going to happen. But we also know historically, I mean, just to your point, that there are lots of examples of other cities that did public money and then got stuck, holding the bag when things went south or when a team decided to move. And frankly, with the Raiders in their own history, they've done development deals in other cities
but that was under. But that
I'm just saying
it's a can of worms because Mr. Davis passed away.
Yeah.
There's different regimes, a different way of thinking.
Your original question though is why do people always assume that public dollars?
And I mean to go there, but
I'm just saying because historically they have. I think that's why people think that there may be a fear of that.
Yeah.
So when I say that, to answer your question at the beginning of this, that I wouldn't do that. I'm just making my position on that clear.
Absolutely.
Now, the cost of an over-ramp for a baseball park, if I'm now seeing how the development of that redevelops Jack London Square, develops retail, now for me as a mayor, I'm also looking at how that creates a sales tax base, a driver, revenue back to the city, and that's a smart investment of public money.
Right.
I'm not going to have a huge issue with that, and it's a discrete, defined cost of something that we're talking about, presumably, hopefully, cost-effective. But that to me is a different thing than saying I'm going to construct a massive edifice to someone and who will have their sports teams play there and hopefully commit to stay here for some time. And that's the difference I'm talking about. I really, I want to be clear. I want the teams to stay. I think we all need to be mindful of the fact, living in Oakland, that it's a real luxury to have one team in your city, let alone three, covering three major sports. I mean, I guess if we had hockey, we would be four, but baseball, football, basketball, my goodness, that's quite a luxury. And to have good quality teams as we've had, even with the current iteration of the Raiders, I'll get better. It's remarkable, frankly.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong about something, because encapsulated this discussion, it seems to me, not just with you and I, but in general, it seems like there's a small Oakland versus large Oakland battle. In other words, those of us who wanted Oakland to overtake San Francisco, me, and others who see Oakland as Brooklyn, which I think is kind of a ridiculous. I mean, I'm not in New York, I'm in the Bay Area. Am I right about that? Brooklyn only has one team. It had more, but. Am I right about that or wrong? Or?
I don't know. I mean, if we're using the sports team sort of as a connection to this.
Not just sports teams, but in general.
I don't know. So let's divorce the sports teams for just a moment. I think when people talk about Oakland's relationship to San Francisco and the fact that we historically sort of live in their shadow, it's called the San Francisco Bay Area, right? Even though this is the East Bay part of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
It's a larger city. It's a city that's also a county. I mean, they're really set up differently, so their ability to deal with resources, development resources, is different. It's a wealthier city than Oakland, and here's the main point, because San Francisco has issues too. They have a crime problem as well. They have housing problem, and they have all the big city issues that everybody else has. But they have a built-in tourist base that provides a steady revenue stream to hotels, to restaurants, and the rest of it that creates revenue for the city on the back end. And we don't right now. I mean, we're developing a restaurant scene here. There are, in fact, lots of restaurateurs from San Francisco, as you know, have relocated here or are interested here because the land is cheap, and they also know that there are people on this side of the bay who are foodies. They really like good quality food.
The tourist thing. Do we not? I mean, for example, Oakland's a rap capital, and yet no Oakland government has embraced rap. And by my estimation, it's lost economic development dollars, and almost an ignorance of a history that, well, really, arguably a black history, or actually, I'll go a step further, it's an integrated history. It speaks to hip-hop has engineered diversity in America, arguably, and yet Oakland ignores that, and it could be a tourist attraction, right?
Well, I think we'd have, I mean, I think there's something inherent about that kind of entertainment business that is tied to the distribution of recorded music, and less about the performance of live music or rap, which might give us an opportunity to trade on that in some ways.
Interesting.
And
Good point.
So certainly, I mean, maybe we could leverage our live theaters at Paramount or Fox, for example, to do more of that and draw more of that base, or perhaps
or like the Tupac Shakur tour. Like Tupac was here or there.
Yeah.
Here's a hologram of Tupac by the City Hall.
No,
you know, I just
but
you know.
But certainly, I mean, I think that's something we should celebrate. But you know, frankly, most of the way to consume that kind of music is through digitized recordings that they listen to on their headphones or everybody else in the street. And so finding a way to monetize that or to create a revenue stream for the city, as you say, and to celebrate what's unique about this is a little more challenging for the city.
Or let's pick another example, Art Murmur, which was growing to a point where it's tracking 50,000 people. You know, that could have been a tourist draw, but
I think it still can.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you want to handle that? I mean,
I think in the arts community in Oakland, that's a slightly different thing, and I hope we've answered your question. I don't know if we answered your question about Brooklyn and Manhattan. We're sort of drifting from it, but I'll stay with the arts.
If you want to add
let me finish the Brooklyn and Manhattan point. I think that
I was going to say, Joe, in my fertile mind, they're all tied together.
Yeah, sure. But if
he agrees. It's like
if you're following this, maybe not everybody's following. But the reality is, we're never going to be San Francisco, right? It annoys me and also sort of amazes me when I drive into San Francisco to work and I divert into the city occasionally. How many cranes did I see? There's a lot of construction going on over there. I'd like to see the same thing here, no question about that, and that kind of growth and development. But the truth is, as I said before, it's just a different area. And it's also extremely expensive to live there. A lot of people who work there don't live there and have to commute in. That's why the BART strike, at least for those workers.
And the BART strike illuminated that with all the lines, people trying to get out of San Francisco.
I think the BART strike probably did a lot to the ferry business again, remind people that there are alternatives.
Well, Kanye West should have invited people into the wedding just to hang out while the crowd's out.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the fact that we're not ever going to be San Francisco means there's something wrong with us. We're not worse than them. We're just different. And the parallel now back to Brooklyn and Manhattan is simply that for a long time, Manhattan was the main attraction in New York.
Right. Yeah.
And
hey, tell me what you're eating, Joe.
Egg whites.
Egg whites. I've got the Lake Shore's omelet. Thank you so much. Yes, and bread. Thank you. Yeah.
And I think what people slowly discovered about the other major boroughs in New York, as we call them, whether it's Harlem or Brooklyn or wherever, is that there were unique, historical, interesting qualities to those places that also made them desirable not only to visit as a tourist, but also desirable for people to move to and to live in. And they've all enjoyed their own kinds of renaissance. But Brooklyn's has been more recent, and Brooklyn has a lot of qualities about it, starting with the richness of its diversity that parallels what we see here in Oakland. If you ask me, there's 1,000 things I can tell you that I love about Oakland, but it would always start with that word diversity.
But also Brooklyn has a basketball team named after it.
Well,
whereas the Warriors should be the Oakland Warriors and they're at Golden State. You know,
you're still stuck on sports.
Well, but
I'm thinking a little more
civic
big picture.
identity.
I know, but nobody's going to move to a city just because they have a sports team named after it.
Wait. I went to the University of Texas at Arlington. I got to say this, okay? I just got to say this. And I don't mean to challenge people, but it's as my friend, okay? You're my friend. But I went to UTA because of the Dallas Cowboys. I went down there because of the big Cowboys.
I'll amend my statement. There are some people who may move there, but I'm going to guess, Denny, that people who are moving are also looking for other things.
Yeah. And they were winning at the time.
And one of the things that people love about this city is its. I think the main thing that people love about this city is its diversity. It's how culturally rich it is here. I visit other cities. You go to other places, and you suddenly know when you're not here because everything is homogeneous, very much the same. And it's frankly a little boring in some ways. Having so much diversity here, and there's a gritty urban edge to living here as well. I think makes this city, in a word, I mean, I know we use this word a lot, but I hope you'll understand what I mean, more authentic. It's real here.
Right.
This is what the real world looks like. And Oakland in that way has a lot in common with Brooklyn, to be honest with you. It has a lot in common in that sense about diversity with major world cities like London, the same way. When you go there, it's not all English, British people, white with mustaches like this with golden hats. It is a slice of life from around the world. Oakland is like that too, just without the other wealth that comes with that, but still with that quality, that richness and diversity. You not only see the people, you see the
we can even talk, by the way, yeah. But I have to ask
in a lot of ways. So I think that's the first thing that I think draws a lot of people here.
And I have to ask you, what are you seeing in your house parties? You've had a number of them. People have told me from the residents.
You know, I always start any house party by asking what would they like to talk about, because there are a lot of issues to talk about. Education, jobs, diversity, public infrastructure, what you asked about sports teams, public safety, and within public safety, a whole host of directions we should go. Civilianizing the police force, the negotiated settlement agreement, how many officers we have, whether ceasefire as a program works, all those things. Invariably, though, in every meeting I go to, it doesn't matter what part of the city I'm in, and it doesn't matter who I'm talking to demographically, right? African American voters, Latino voters, the white people who live in the hills, whatever it is, doesn't matter. The number one thing that they want to talk about is safety. Always safety. And there may be slightly different perspectives on what should constitute safety, but the one thing they recognize is it's something they want, and it's something right now they feel they don't have.
Is there a general consensus on how they want the problem to be solved?
I think the vast majority of people that I've spoken to, at least, whether they're happy about the police and the negotiated settlement agreement or not, will still readily admit that we are understaffed as a department, and they want to see the department brought up to proper staffing levels. They have lots of questions about how to pay for that, and that's a conversation we have about this. And there are differences of opinion about how that should work. But I think there's a consensus that we don't have enough police officers right now. And even from detractors of the police department, they recognize that it's better to have a fully staffed force, particularly to providing constitutional policing. And so that is the usual direction a lot of this conversation is going. And the absence of having enough police, I think, is really what's driving this. Because we have had, although City Hall will sometimes cherry pick statistics and pick a certain week to say, hey, we're down over last week this time, when they really should be looking at 3 months this year in comparison to 3 months. They don't. Sometimes they pick a particular day and say, at this point last year, the homicide rate was this. And it doesn't really, in the end, matter if this year we end up with 130 homicides as opposed to last year's 140 and say that's progress. The fact is, you shouldn't have any homicides, right? And too many times, the victims, as I said before, are children. It's not okay. And that should never be allowed. It should be, that's why, for me, this should be the primary focus. And I think you find that sentiment in the viewers that I talked to, at least not viewers, I'm sorry, but the respondents in the house meetings.
Do you find that people at the house parties, they actually know each other? Because my big thing about Oakland is it seems like Oaklanders don't know each other well.
Yeah.
Am I wrong about that? I mean, I like to be, but...
No, the places I've been to, typically the hosts have invited people in the neighborhood. So there are lots of neighbors who come. Occasionally you get someone who comes from outside a neighborhood who joins who just would like to listen as well.
Well,
but generally, actually, no, I think they do know each other.
That's good. I'm glad to be wrong about that.
And they've probably already organized in some way along this particular issue. And that's part of what's driving it.
And do you feel, you mentioned ceasefire. What's your opinion regarding ceasefire and regarding the negotiated settlement agreement?
I support any kind of tool in the toolbox that will address violent crime, and ceasefire is something that's worked in other cities. In fact, there are different versions of it around the country. The Boston version is slightly different from the Chicago version, and we're using sort of a hybrid of that, I think, here in Oakland. I've had a chance to speak with the consultants who drive ceasefire here in Oakland. I think it can work. We also have to be really clear, because the mayor, for example, likes to throw ceasefire out and say, this is this going to win the day. Ceasefire is only about dealing with the lethal and non-lethal use of guns in violent crime. So it doesn't cover all crime. It's just about gun violence in particular. And addresses it by going after a discrete population, a small number of individuals, hopefully a manageable number of individuals, who the police believe by data analysis to be responsible for statistically most of the violent crime in the city. So if you control their behavior, like an intervention with them, theoretically you'll get the numbers down. Okay, that's not a bad idea. Will it solve all of our crime problems? No, it's one tool, right? Now here's the problem. The last time that I looked, which was about 6 months ago on this particular thing, I met with one of the consultants. One of the conversations we had about this was the fact that most of the shooters and victims in the city were at an age group that was slightly older, much older, than much of the population we address our Measure Y funds to when we're dealing with violence prevention. And the point that came out of that was you have to align, you're using Measure Y funding, you should be aligning the populations so that you're supporting it that way, dollars are spent that way, so that it actually complements and supports what you're doing on the other end with something like Ceasefire. And that's kind of a coordination, I think, that if we're taking a smarter way of thinking about this, we would do that.
Now, I'm going to have two questions because I don't want your food to get cold or mine either, but it's good looking stuff.
Yeah.
The first one is...
You had another question, though, too. What was your other question? Besides Ceasefire, negotiate a settlement.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen, I think at this point...
thank you for
it's okay. The judge, Judge Henderson is basically in control of the department. Tom Frazier is working for him as a compliance director. Will oversee this. I think we should let this run its course. I want to be out of the NSA as quickly as possible because I want there to again be public control, not sort of court's control of this. Part of my concern about the way things are right now is that with the negotiated settlement and the people who are in charge of making sure that there's compliance, their first objective really is comply with the NSA. The department itself, of course, has the obligation to protect us.
We should clarify, NSA is Negotiated Settlement Agreement, not National Security Agency.
Right. So the only thing I want from this is and I think Thomas Frazier gets this. I want the people who are pushing for compliance to also understand that if they control the department, that they also are responsible for providing public safety. I don't really want to see recruiting a new police chief right now. I'd almost like to get us through compliance with the NSA and then look for a new chief. And for this reason, go back to your sports analysis.
Sure.
When Al Davis was alive and would have yearly, fire a coach, hire another coach, you always had to ask, so who's going to want to go coach for this guy, right? And you wouldn't always get the best coaches, because they'd been there and they'd get so mad they'd be gone or they got fired. It seemed like after a time what you were getting was people who really wanted the job, but not necessarily people who were the most qualified to do the job. Those people could make more demands and be a little more picky. And you knew if you got there that after a time Al would be meddling with your offense and probably be gone in a year, so you'd have some interference from above. I think being police chief in this environment is a little bit like that. You're coming in and you're not really, and the city's not really in control of this. There's a compliance director that's in NSA we have to get through. And so I don't know that if we're doing a national search, and we will, we're really going to find the best candidates. I would rather be done with the NSA, have the department perform to the point where there aren't these issues anymore, and then cast a wide net and make a great offer to someone who could really come in and take us into the next sort of generation of safety in the city. And I think that will attract a better quality of candidate who wait.
Now, very recently, Mayor Kwan made a comment in the National Journal that ticked me off.
Yeah.
I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
But I want to know your opinion. Is there something wrong with Oakland as a black image? Mayor Kwan said that it was something that it was a challenge for her to tell people that Oakland's not a black city anymore. Did I misread that?
Well, it may be misreading, but that's certainly one way that I think it was taken. If you read the whole question and the whole interview, I think she was asked a question about what are your challenges, and then she launched into it. And then there was a sub-question involved with that, or maybe it was part of her answer about some people believing we needed more police officers, and I think we got
they thought they needed 50% black police officers because of the population mix.
Composition because you have that many people, and that got her into a discussion to make a point that she was making about how the number of African Americans is actually declining. I think she would say that she was only making that point in response to how many African American police officers we should have. But I think and maybe the editing sort of emphasized that point. But
they actually they didn't even edit it. They ran the version that I ran. They ran the.
Well, you got the second version, which was a full text. The first version, it was a truncated version.
Right.
So
the full text sounded worse.
It did. And so I think that perhaps she intended something else. But the bottom line in all of this, Teddy, is why even go there? Why even talk about this being your challenge?
Right.
And to suggest or imply somehow that because there are less people of one race here or one background here, but the city is different, and to imply perhaps that it's less of a reason for people not to come here than it used to be is an inference that some people are taking. Why would you do that? Why even go down that road? If you've got challenges, just say what they are. If it had been me, I would have said the biggest challenge we have is safety, and in all its myriad different ways, and how that affects our ability to attract businesses and to grow jobs here and to create a regular revenue stream for the city to provide basic services. I think the only thing I would say about diversity is what I said to you earlier, which is this is a richly diverse place. And of course that means we sometimes have conflict and disagreements, and we have ongoing discussions, for example, about race and the rest of it, but every big city has that. And any city that is as diverse as Oakland is going to have lots of disagreement about that. The great thing about that here is that we all talk about it.
Right.
Sometimes some of that stuff stymies our political process, but that's why I think you want a leader who, rather than trip over these things, as I think the mayor did by making what she thought was an innocent comment about it, actually broker an honest discussion about this. And I think we should talk about the ways that we're different so that we understand the ways that we're connected as well. Too often we don't talk about these things, and then someone says something like this, and it boils over and becomes a problem.
How can people who want to support you get in touch with your campaign?
Well, they can Google my name, Joe Tuman, JoeTumanForMayor.com, I believe is the website. It's pretty hard not to find us. We're also on Facebook, Joe Tuman for Mayor, on Facebook. And if you go to our website, there's a whole large amount of information there. If you want to volunteer, click that icon. If you'd like to contribute to the campaign, you can. And I'll also list at the website places where I'm appearing if you want to come watch me.
Oh, before I forget, Brian Parker has raised over $100,000. Where are you right now? Can you ready to announce?
We'll report our numbers at the end of December when we're legally required to. I will tell you that the fundraising has been a bust, and our numbers will be extremely good.
Hey, Joe.
There won't be any problem with liability.
Let's eat.
Thanks.
You got it. Thank you.